Joe.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. I'm Saeed Khan, and yes, we are now joined with everybody who's going to be here today. And we have, after a little bit of a hiatus, glad to have you back on, President of BME Consulting and former Director of the Wayne County Public Service Department, Beverly Watts. We have PR specialist and former Detroit Free Press reporter, Darci McConnell. We have two out of our three attorneys, Joel Sklar and Bill Seikaly. Bill, you joined so late, I thought you were in your own personal rendition of The Iceman Cometh. But luckily, no ice on the door, knocking on the door for you today. We have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. We, of course, have co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. Steve Fishman is traveling, and Nancy Derringer, our veteran journalist, is also busy with a scheduled conflict of her own. Apparently, Elon Musk sent her to Home Depot to get some more gas for his chainsaw, but more on that later. All right. Well, shockingly, a lot of today's coverage of this week circles around the Trump administration. And so let's go ahead and start with the international news first. In Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, that new Geneva of the world, apparently the United States and Russian officials were meeting over the fate of the conflict in Ukraine, so-called peace talks, which surprisingly didn't have one of the parties to the conflict present, i.e. Ukraine. Instead, the Trump administration was requesting that Ukraine hand over half of its mineral resources rights to the United States, something valued at $500 billion with a T dollars. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz badgered President Volodymyr Zelensky into trying to do this. Apparently, Zelensky has resisted it, to which, of course, Zelensky was subjected to a barrage of invectives by President Trump, by Vice President J.D. Vance, and anybody else who felt like chiming in from the Trump administration. In fact, even calling Zelensky a democratically elected official a dictator. I know we're beyond calling this the new normal, but is this the new foreign policy orientation of the United States?
Explain to me the Russia hoax. This is clearly if you needed an asset to be a president, this is who you choose. I mean, he's doing Russia's bidding. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. It's just bizarre. I can't believe the Republicans are standing for it. The Democrats, I don't know what we can do about it, but it's an absurdity that a Republican president, the party of Reagan, is embracing Putin and advocating for him at the cost of our allies, and it's crazy. So
explain to me the resources thing. How is that? What's the rationale behind them?
He wants security for the money that we advance for arms.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And Joel, I agree with you, but the fact of the matter is it's absurd, not just for a Republican president. It's absurd for any president in modern times. And I thought Saeed did a very good job of describing what was going on in Riyadh. But, in the past, we've had conflicts, international conflicts that have been so tense that we can't have both sides at the table. And then we engage in this funny term called shuttle diplomacy, where we go back and forth. But this is clearly the king of North America who wants to impose his will on what he thinks ought to happen. Therefore, he doesn't need shuttle diplomacy. He plans to impose his peace plan. And all of this stuff about Zelensky not being a dictator, I wonder if that's a little projection. And two, that he started the war. this is like January 6th. We all watched this on television, goddammit.
Right.
How could we not know that it was Putin who started the war? And this gaslighting of reality is amazing to me because it continues to work.
That's the new normal, is that.
And I made the mistake. I shouldn't say it that way. I'm going to calm down here. I turned on Fox News yesterday to see what people who don't agree with me are watching. And they're perpetuating this absurd myth that this is somehow Ukraine's fault.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and play a little bit of devil's advocate here. We had the situation where, starting with probably the George W. Bush administration, a slow incursion into not only former Soviet spheres of influence in Eastern Europe, but even trying to bring in former Soviet republics, including the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and then Georgia in 2008, into NATO, into the European Union. Same with Ukraine, back around the same amount of time. And if you remember, there was that president who then was allegedly poisoned by Putin with benzene, and it made his face fairly disfigured. So there has been this movement by the United States to try to go into not only the former Soviet neighborhood, but into the former Soviet republics as being an encroachment. And Putin has certainly then shown that he's not going to borrow from Twisted Sister, take it, and that he is going to push back, and he's doing so right now in a fairly muscular way regarding Ukraine. Allan.
I think he is treating Zelensky just like he treats all the domestic opponents of his, or any Republican who votes against him. He just belittles them. He gets public support against them. They get death threats. And I mean, it's just the whole approach to belittling people. And that's what he's doing to Zelensky. He's treating him no different than he would, Murkowski if she votes against something. Or
so you have a video about, I think, Allan, about why the Republicans are so quiet right now.
All right.
So we're going to keep watching this dynamic. Republicans who can't actually bear what Trump is doing to their own states and to their own constituents, but they're too scared to say they're against it. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska asking for exemptions to Trump's cuts and actions, specifically for Indian tribes in Alaska. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa asking for an exemption for Iowa farmers to the tariffs on Canada. Republican Florida Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar asking for an exemption to the indiscriminate deportation policies. Republican Senator Katie Britt asking for an exemption on the massive cuts to scientific and medical research, saying, you couldn't possibly mean Alabama for those.
Wacky.
So what are we then to make of this? I mean, and let's be fair, the Republicans are certainly quiet. Why is it that Europe also seems to be so quiet? After all, J.D. Vance goes to the Munich Security Conference and berates them, possibly risking alliances and certainly goodwill, lectures them on the absence of free speech in Europe, purportedly, leaning very heavily towards sympathizing with and showing support and solidarity for right-wing movements. But given the fact that on the one hand, Europe is so concerned and invested with what's going on in Ukraine and possible Russian reprisals, why is Europe accepting its exclusion in these peace talks?
I would debate that point with you. I'm not sure that I accept your premise there. There's an old expression about getting into a mudslinging contest with a pig. It doesn't make much sense. You're going to get dirty, and the pig's going to enjoy it. And I think that Europe, the European Union, has decided getting into this contest with him doesn't make any sense. But I think that you're going to see some action from the European Union when Trump tries to impose tariffs against them. And I think what Europe is doing is pulling in, creating its own alliances that exclude the United States. will include Canada, will include Mexico, and that they plan on doing the end run around Trump, which is the only rational position, I think, that they can take at this point. What good does it do to get into the mudslinging contest with Trump? Has anybody ever seen him lose one of those?
He won't. I mean, it's his forte. But it seems to me that there's a right-wing Christian nationalist infection, a virus that is contagious, that has infected Europe as well as the United States of America. I think that Putin wants to reconstitute the Soviet Empire, and Trump's going to help him do that. I think Bill's right that the Europeans will have their own bloc, however they get there, because they got to protect their own interests. God knows, and I think Canada is going to join that bloc. We're going to be alone. That's what Trump is doing, pushing making your friends enemies, and I guess your enemies happier. But we're going to be alone, and that's clearly what's going on. So I think we can, this is all the pre-war conditions of World War II are back. That's where we're going. We're heading backwards. We're going to make America great again. We're going to fight another great war. This time we may lose. God only knows, but that's where we're going.
So one of the things that I'm noticing, Darci, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, this is just an aside. I think there is some value in standing up to Trump, and we saw that with the Illinois governor, the New York governor, and some governors are taking a different tact. I think Newsom is taking a different approach, but it doesn't have to be either or, frankly. I think there are some times where you stand up and speak up, and I was pretty proud to see, particularly the governor of Illinois, make his comments.
Now, one thing that seems to be happening internationally is polls are showing that it's actually young people that are driving this lurch to the right. In Germany, which is going to be having elections, the AfD, which is a far-right party, here in the United States, as we even discussed last week, a really interesting article in New York Magazine and in others showing that it's actually young people, Generation Z, and millennials who don't seem to have a problem with mortgaging democracy for a strong man in power. So it seems as though this is a contagion. Barb.
Seems to be young men. Okay. It's young men. It's the tech bros, and it's a group of people that really have seen they're anti-woke, which means anti-empathy and anti being a good person, but they think that everything that happens is taking from them, and this is all being spurred on by people like Joe Rogan and Trump himself, and I think they're the problem. I don't know, but I don't think young women, even close, but it's young guys and young white guys.
And you see, there was a speech where Steve Bannon was just recently speaking, and again did basically a Zig Heil like that, and they're really throwing that out there and trying to fuck with people and it's so insulting. They're just all insulting.
Yeah.
Well, Allan, I mean, you mentioned that, and this is how bad it has to be. The one of the members of the French far right actually refused to follow Bannon on stage at the CPAC conference because he flashed the Sig Heil. I mean, how bad is it when the French not going it? Beverly, what do you think? I mean, from a standpoint of PR and messaging, this is clearly a message that is resonating with the Republican side of the aisle, particularly young people. Is the issue of Ukraine just simply, and pardon the pun, too foreign for people to really care about what this means for America on the global stage?
I don't think it's too far, but I also think that, of course, this war has been going on for a while. And of course, we're in this era generation where it's now, sound bites and everything's moving extremely, extremely fast. I just think that what's going on, if you're talking about the United States, the stage of it, especially here in the United States, unfortunately, I just think that's not a top of mind priority right now with things and issues that's more closer to home. They just think it's like, hey, if it doesn't affect me, and they can't see in the long run how it can affect them, their democracy, it's just not resonating with them right now. I just think that, Barbara's right. They just not even woke. It's just surprising to me how many people are just not even woke, and they don't want to hear the other side. You can see rationally, you can see all this jargon. They just not hearing it. I don't know if they're just defensively brain dead I don't know if they're defeated. I don't know. I just don't know. You can't even call this now or what's going on, not only in our country, but the fear around the world. And so it's kind of deafening and scary. But it's deafening. People are not woke. I don't know what's going on, but they got to start standing up. We have to start standing up.
So you bring up a good point, Beverly. How many of you know how long the conflict in Ukraine has been going on? Anyone?
Which
coming up on an anniversary?
I mean,
the current conflict in Ukraine. Yeah, the current incarnation of the war. Anyone?
2 years?
Yes? 3 years. It's 3 years, but that's the wrong calculation. For young people, that's 189,216,000 TikTok videos.
Right.
So when you're talking about attention span, how do you expect anybody to hold their attention for that long? So there you go. Some really interesting comments coming up, and so thank you for all of you who have been listening. And I don't want to go ahead and ignore Faris Khan, who right off the bat reminded us, yes, Canada beat USA in the Four Nations hockey tournament in overtime yesterday. I know that has been a very contentious tournament, exuding nationalism and ill will of the kind we haven't seen since India and Pakistan have played cricket. So we have that. But you've been talking about imposing tariffs, and the Trump administration has now announced that it plans on placing tariffs on any country which possesses what's known as a VAT or a value-added tax. 175 out of 195 countries, in fact, impose some kind of a VAT, including the United Kingdom and basically every country in Europe, as does Canada with both its provincial tax as well as its general services tax. It's basically a sales tax. And this is the plan that the Trump administration has to punish those countries which, in fact, impose this. I don't think that the VAT only is imposed on imports to those countries. It's across the board. But yet, this is the new measure that the Trump administration has. I mean, it seems as though he's just looking to punish the world. And is that a fair assessment?
I think it's important to look at the image he's trying to create to his followers. And I think he's trying to do two things. One is we're going to use Doge to slice our expenses, even though we're laying off a bunch of hardworking people,
we're slicing, right.
increasing the unemployment rate. But two, he talks about it in terms of we're going to bring money into this country. And that's one way of doing it. Look at it. A VAT is just another tax. It's a value-added tax on anything that's being sold. It's a sales tax. He wants an excuse for being able to tax things coming in from other countries and allege that it's filling American coffers. It's very superficially appealing. It's just substantively wrong.
Economically, it's proven disastrous. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, it's H.L. Macon's quote. To every problem, there's a simple and inexpensive solution that's wrong, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah, that's true. He's punishing not just Europe and the world, but his own people. Everybody. This is an angry man who's manifesting his rage, and it's generalized toward everything and everyone, unless you're within that circle of loyalists. Maybe we're seeing some psychosis, God knows, but he's suggesting things that are just insane. The Gaza,
Joel, you may be right, but I don't think Trump's that deep. I don't think he's really angry about any of this stuff because I don't think he has any real beliefs. I think that he's doing these things and saying these things because he knows that that's what his base wants to hear. I think if he thought that being woke and DEI it would help him get a following and a base, he'd spout that. He has no beliefs. And I'm afraid that all of this stuff that he's saying is just to get people on his side.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, if you look at his history on race, issues of workers, the birther thing that with Obama, I think he's kind of made it clear where his head is at. Now, I do agree.
I don't doubt that he's a bigot, Darcy. I didn't mean to imply that.
Yeah. And I do agree with you about the lack of depth and original thought, though. I think, that's why he's got President Musk there. That's why he's got Bannon there and all the others. So,
Bannon actually seems to now be playing second fiddle.
Yeah.
I mean, even at CPAC, Bannon followed Musk and got a relatively speaking, very tepid ovation compared to Musk and his chainsaw. And by the way, that's not a metaphor or a nickname or anything. It was an actual chainsaw. I do want to make one point regarding a comment that was posted. Someone said that Deadline Detroit is essentially a metaphor, a microcosm of things in the world and the dysfunctionality because it is dominated by mostly old white men. I just want to remind the person that looking at the demographics today, actually, the old white men are in the minority, and actually they're not that old. I mean, I think Joel and Bill are in their 20s, and Allan is in his 30s. It's just that they use low resolution cameras.
Great filters.
Yes. Well,
No,
actually, not
if
great.
if this makes me look 30, it's not a great filter, believe me.
Right.
I look terrible at 30 apparently. So yeah.
Actually, Bill, I think I am 2 years away from my cataract surgery, so I'll keep you posted on that. Might be feeling it a bit early today, but no, I think that what we do provide is hopefully perspective that is not necessarily age contingent, that is not necessarily according to some archetypes of what some might feel are either generational or gendered perspectives. I hope that our conversation here on Deadline Detroit really shows a lot more diversity than perhaps what you might be feeling. So hopefully you will watch us regularly and you will feel differently about that. So thank you about that. Well, when it comes to the slashing and burning of the government thanks to the chainsaw that Mr. Musk is wielding, one of those areas, of course, is USAID. And apparently it turns out that Trump's suspension of foreign aid by shutting down USAID has also had the unintended consequence of freezing several anti-terrorism programs. So the idea of using a chainsaw as opposed to a scalpel, I think, is an apt way of looking at what perhaps is the real regard of this administration on truly cutting waste and fighting corruption. Allan.
They laid off like 6,000 IRS people right in the middle of tax season. And they say, they interviewed one of the people on TV and he says, I haven't even had an evaluation. And they're saying, he said, I get an email saying I'm underperforming. You can't tell me 6,000 people are underperforming, that they did such a surgical excising of it. And then they have a guy from the administration at a press conference. This is really creepy guy who says, well, who have you ever heard say, yeah, I'm underperforming? Whoever admits that? It's just so creepy the way they're going about it. It's just such mass slaughter, and they're pretending like there's actually a surgical precision there when they laid off thousands of workers who oversee our stockpile of weapons and stuff like that. And then suddenly, oops. I mean, what we're seeing is they have no clue what these agencies perform and the tentacles that these agencies have, like USAID and stuff. They don't realize they're fucking over the farmers. The farmers are stuck with all these crops.
But they don't care.
That's the point.
I mean, they don't care.
Right. And that's why I say I go back to what everybody was saying, but especially, Bill made the point of, he's really, in a way, a lot of these things, playing to his base. But and it will, it's just February now, not even March yet. It's going to come a time when all of these things they're doing, it's going to start hitting their base right in the ass. And that's when you're going to start hearing the dog holler,
Well, I think there is some of that already with a drop in his approval ratings. You didn't mention the cuts to the people that have the response plan for bird flu, which a lot of folks believe will be the next pandemic. So they wouldn't give a number there. It was like several. But I think big picture, all these things potentially make us much more vulnerable, much more unsafe. And they essentially are going to create longer term costs. So whatever savings are going to result the long-term impact is going to cost us much more.
Well, I think isn't the aren't the numbers something like, even with all these cuts, you're probably not going to reduce the deficit by even more than 1%. I mean, or of the budget. Maybe it's not the deficit, maybe it's the budget. I mean, the numbers are really relatively minuscule. But I want to ask this question about, and you mentioned, Allan, that apparently they also fired 300 people who are responsible for safeguarding the nuclear stockpile, and now they're desperately trying to bring them back into the government. How does that then play into conspiracy theories that Trump is an asset and possibly an agent for Putin? Because would Putin not be the one to benefit from the U.S. Nuclear stockpile being left unguarded?
Yeah, we're whatever it is, we're less safe than we were, and it certainly does benefit anyone who has interest in disrupting the United States. I mean, I think Trump, just to add more, to weaponize the world further, I think is allowing disinformation or foreign campaigns, foreign influence on our own elections, which is unheard of. Yeah, it's for Putin, it's for China, it's for Iran. Anytime that we're weaker and less safe, it's for everybody around us who we have pissed off, and that is a bunch of nations.
Well, Joel, funny you mentioned that about elections. There was just a revelation that apparently there was a slush fund or some money that went toward the Indian elections that were held, and the allegation that somehow the U.S. was trying to manipulate the outcome of the last election there, which the BJP and Prime Minister Modi won yet again fairly decisively.
And it's just to legitimize any election that we have. If the next Republicans, God willing, who live there, disinformation, they're going to question the legitimacy of any loss and any bad decision that hits Republicans. It's just the further deterioration of our democratic foundations, and that's what we're kind of witnessing in real time.
Don't you long for a better bygone era when we simply depose democratically elected officials like Mossadegh in Iran and Arbenz in Guatemala and Allende? I mean, wasn't that just cleaner?
Yeah, listen, we have sinned, but now, no question. But the sins we're committing now are mortal sins to us. These are existential sins he's committing. These are going. I agree, completely with what's going to happen down the road. That there are going to be catastrophic results by these fundamental changes you're making. Having these people directing it, Kash Patel at the FBI for 10 years. That's insane. Having the people that you've already nominated for the various positions are crazy. Do you feel safer because Kristi Noem is the head of Homeland Security? My dog.
I wouldn't if I was a dog.
I don't feel safer.
I want to kind of follow up on these questions that Duvid is asking, because it has, of course, a Michigan connection. There are now more than a few op-eds that have been written that Trump's policies are going to be particularly harmful to the state of Michigan, to its economy, whether it's its agriculture sector, farming sector, being a border state with Canada, and whatever's the new NAFTA that we have or we don't have. And that's the auto industry. And on the one hand, it seems as though Trump is interested in protecting American companies. And of course, we have two very big ones here with GM and Ford, Stellantis sort of foreign owned, thanks to Fiat and all. But what do you think it's going to mean with his relationship with Elon Musk? Elon Musk, of course, trying to make America electric for the first time. I don't think again. And is there the possibility that the big three, or at least the big two U.S. companies here, are going to suffer by the Trump administration? Yeah, Bill.
Well, clearly, if he doesn't modify it, they will suffer. But you've got to wonder what the real play is here. One of the people online talked about that the goal of Doge, and I happen to agree with this, is an effort to privatize much of government, to move it into privatized, to move it into private industry, which would be a boom for Musk and others. There's no question, though, that the auto industry will be decimated if these tariffs go into effect. I think we talked about it last week. These parts that are manufactured, and the tariff as they're presently proposed, would be anytime a product comes in to the country. A lot of parts, for example, generators, and I know this from work I used to do, generators that go into cars go back and forth across the Canadian border 4 or 5 times before they're actually assembled into a vehicle.
Right.
And so the tax on a generator would skyrocket. The auto industry, I assume, would scramble to change that, or to try and get exemptions, but it would decimate the auto industry. It would simply, you could not compete as an auto company in Michigan if these tariffs go into effect.
Allan.
I agree. I mean, Ford and GM are doing a lot of production down in Mexico. To shift that production up here would take a while. It's just not practical to snap your finger and say, okay. The other thing is, it's interesting, Elon Musk. I mean, the government, the Biden administration was trying to put charging stations around the country so that people would be more comfortable buying a electric car without worrying about it running out of charge. And what we see is that Elon Musk, you go to Santa Monica, I was there last December, there's a whole block of Elon Musk charging stations. And I think basically what Elon Musk wants to dominate that market. And so if the federal government gets involved, it puts Elon Musk at a little bit of a disadvantage or less of an advantage. And I think that's why they're going to kill those charging stations put up by the government, and Elon Musk is going to have a monopoly. It's so incredible, the conflicts of interest. I mean, this time Trump didn't even pretend to distance himself from any of his businesses. Elon Musk has not done anything to distance himself, and he keeps saying, "Oh yeah, trust him. He'll decide if there's a conflict." It's total bullshit. It's just insane what we're doing. We're standing there watching the dismantling of our country. It's like yesterday, Kash Patel getting confirmed was like the final piece of the coup. I mean, my only hope is that the FBI agents are going to be watching him like a dog. Look, he would not be the first unpopular FBI director. Mueller, there were a lot of people who didn't like him, particularly after 2001, when he had to retool the FBI to put more people in counterterrorism, counterintelligence. But he was a straight arrow. He wasn't going to fuck up. He wasn't going to do illegal shit. This guy is going to do illegal shit, and he's going to be outed by FBI agents.
And he's supposed to be going to make millions off some Chinese fast fashion company. So, given his predecessor, J. Edgar Hoover's penchant for a certain kind of fashion, I guess it remains to be seen how Kash Patel is going to be dressing when he gets to work. Darci.
So here's some hopeful things. One is that all Senate Democrats voted against Patel. There are some confirmations where they should have voted no, and they didn't. So I was glad to see that. I think Sheryl Crow sold her Tesla and gave the money to NPR. So, and there's potential for some blowback on Musk directly. There's a boycott right now against Target that's having a real impact. There's some upcoming ones. So, I'm hoping that he'll start to feel it in his pocketbook despite stacking the deck like they're trying to do right now.
Very so. Hey, Allan, why don't we take a commercial right now?
All righty. If I can give me a second here. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Okay, well, President Trump has decided that in spite of the fact that he has the power of the pulpit, he can call a press conference whenever he wants. He still prefers to use social media, and particularly his own platform of Truth Social, where this week he said, essentially, that no laws are broken if he's, quote, saving the country. And Allan, I think we have a video for this.
we're not the only ones who know he's breaking the law. So does he. Because if he didn't know that, why this weekend would he post, "He who saves his country does not violate any law"? That is wild. That is a wild thing. Did he just tweet it? Is there any? Do we have video of him saying that?
When the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
Scary.
And of course,
I will note that the Republicans got Nixon out. Here, they're quiet as church mice. They refuse to stand up to him, despite the fact that so many of them know that what he's doing is improper. But,
well, on top of that, Bill, you also have the U.S. Supreme Court, which essentially has given him presidential immunity, irrespective of whether he's saving the country or not saving the country. So I'm not sure if his tweet was actually even required to tell us why he's motivated by this. But what is this going to look like then? I mean, as far as given the Department of Justice headed by Pam Bondi, given the fact that you have some rather quiescent judges around the country, I know some have said that the judiciary is still holding its line. Given the fact that pretty much there's not much expectation from Congress to put any kind of pushback to maintain the integrity of separation of powers or checks and balances, is this essentially going to be then that he will technically be not violating any laws?
Yes, I think so. I mean, as I read the opinion, it's the outer perimeters that are being protected of the presidency, of the executive powers. So I think he is pretty much absolutely immune from anything remotely related to policy, and that's what's terrifying. Just as I read it as very strengthening the executive office beyond measure, beyond anything that I conceived of. So,
wow! But it'll be interesting. Well, first of all, remember that it also addressed the fact that the ultimate power or control is the impeachment process. I think that's important. Not that we have the votes, and not that we have the courage that would be necessary. But two, it'll be interesting to see if that opinion is extended to agents of the president. So can Bondi do something that is obviously illegal and seek that same immunity?
Doesn't she have prosecutorial immunity though already if she makes those decisions? I mean, isn't it pretty absolute if she says, "I think I have enough to go forward and I think there's a crime"?
Actually, I'm thinking the other way around. I'm not so sure that what happened in New York with the mayor wasn't illegal. That the decision to dismiss the prosecution, if it's determined to be a quid pro quo, would be illegal. Would Bondi or her deputies be able to be prosecuted for that by anyone? I think it's an open question, but my concern is that the immunity that's been provided to the president would be extended to his executive officers.
Yeah, I think we saw John Mitchell go to prison.
Exactly right.
I think the problem is, no matter what, I can't imagine Pam Bondi says, "Well, Mr. President, that might be illegal." He'll say, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of you." It doesn't matter. The immunity thing is, the pardons, immunity, all that kind of stuff is being thrown out. We saw it, I mean, Biden just gave a blanket, basically immunity to all these people with these pardons. I think we've reached a whole new area. I mean, no president would take advantage of the Supreme Court rulings except for Trump. Maybe.
Listen, the genie's out of the bottle. We're not going back to any of these old norms. Right. Here, this is a serious problem, in my opinion. The Democrats are going to end up abusing this in the same way Trump has.
Correct.
Because once these norms get broken, they never go back, ever.
Yeah, there's always some deformity in the organism that we are. That was a problem with January 6th, is it just created such a god awful fissure or fracture that we never healed, and now we're growing with one leg shorter than the other. I mean, we're going in the wrong direction, and we're not a healthy nation. And hard to watch.
Come on, ladies. Help me out here. I mean, one of you has to be more optimistic than this. Is there going to be? Is
it going to be what?
Does it matter what I say now? Because you're already dug in. No, is there going to be a snapback? I mean, and what's that going to look like? I have to think that the nation is self-correcting at a certain point. Barb.
All right. There's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of talk. Darci talked about an event that she went to. People are getting together and they're coming up with ways. They're showing up at Republicans' offices. They need to be showing up at Democrats' offices too. Gretchen Whitmer needs to know that we are pissed and this careful approach is not working. It is time for bold action. We have a terrible, terrible thing happened in Detroit this week. And I know you all know about it, where a water main broke and completely flooded a solid square mile. Flooded and froze out. And it's horrible and it's terrible, but it was so bad that even Mike Duggan and the Great Lakes Water Authority had to go, yeah, that was our fault. We're going to have to pay for that. But the response of the people of Detroit has been a beautiful thing. And I sent Allan a thing. There is there's places to go if you want to donate. But we have to, and I said this earlier this week, we have all got to get out of our comfort zone. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to start making phone calls. We've got to start showing up. I mean, and I haven't either. So I'm including myself. I went to one demo this week and it was 8 degrees and I was there for like 20 minutes and I went home. And I'm sorry. But I mean, there is stuff to do, and you can join 5 Calls app on your phone and just start flooding these people with phone calls. It's possible that people are going to lose all of their Social Security. We're going to lose Medicare. We're going to be harming seniors and children and disabled people and veterans. Right. And is it going to be too late when that happens? Because it's on the way. And so, anybody out there, I mean, yeah, I might be an old white lady, but I'm here to tell you, get up.
No, I can say Barb is right, but there are, it's been a little slow, but there are things that are occurring that I know. I participated in a couple of meetings. I mean, it's just really just regrouping. I think I'm not speaking for our whole community, but I know that within the Black community as well is trying to, as the whole Democratic Party, as you're going into certain things, whether independent, whether we regroup, we're having that dialogue and working together. In the short term, it's trying to establish a long-term plan and a short term. In the short term, I know here in the community, what we're trying to do is now get people's attention real fast by money. When you talk about the targets, when you're talking about coming up on February 28th, throughout this country, and even I'm on a lot of those chains, in the Black community, everybody's pledged, we're not going to buy anything. So they're encouraging everyone on the 27th and the 29th to go ahead and buy stuff. Don't purchase gas, don't purchase anything. And that's not to harm anyone, because we want to still support small businesses and mom and pops, but it's just one day. And that's what we're trying to do, is get attention as well as trying to get a plan together.
Right. Darci.
So I'll give some numbers. I'm an optimist at heart. So we had 700 people protest in the bitter cold in Lansing for President's Day, or not my President's Day. We had 38 organizations that came together to put on a virtual resistance summit with about 2,000 people who were part of that call, including Congresswoman Ingalls, who said the 5 prongs are litigate, legislate, advocate, educate, and communicate. So I don't know, it's like 70 lawsuits? I'm not sure. Of course, we saw our AG be part of the lawsuits to, impact what President Musk is trying to do. And so I feel all those things make me feel very positive, very hopeful that people are making the calls. They're showing up at their offices. So all those things are happening. And so the lawsuits have slowed things down, but the volume has gone up. And so people who had that malaise period for a minute, that's over. So those all make me feel optimistic.
Barb.
Because we're dealing with tech bros. We really are. There's a list of businesses that are identified as supporting Project 2025. There is no amount of money that we can spend that's as valuable as our data. And so if you go through that list, and if you have any of those apps on your phone, delete them. And even if you go buy them, make sure that is not on there, because they're still harvesting you when you're not even doing anything. You walk in, like if I was to walk into Target, I'm a Target Circle member. Mm-hmm. And they've got me, they're on there, and they say, put your phone on airplane mode if you go into one of these stores, or delete the app, but tell them why you're doing it. I mean, there's things big and little that we can do, and we have to, and it's going to this is just the beginning.
Bill.
It's going to be a long haul.
I've been accused of being an optimist in the past, and wearing bunny ears.
I think you looked a lot different back then, Bill.
Yeah, and I wish that I hope and pray that Darci's right. I really do. Okay, enough. But
I was waiting for that.
But I want to explain my present pessimism here. The fact of the matter is that everybody kept on saying, "Oh, this is the end of Trump," from the grab the pussy comment to we're going to just change the Constitution with an executive order. It's always going to be the end of Trump.
John McCain.
The problem is not Trump. The problem is that there is a huge section, and I didn't believe this. I used to tell people it's only 10 or 20% of the American population that really is this bad. I was wrong. His numbers are going down, but they're still in the 40s.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that too many of the American population supports this crap. And as long as that's true, we're going to have a very serious problem. Musk is the wealthiest man in the world, and he's given access to all this stuff. It is terrifying. Correct. Because we have no idea. Oh, and by the way, they walk into court and say, "Oh, Musk isn't really running this stuff." Right. Really? I mean, all the evidence to the contrary.
If the shoe were on their foot,
up over 400 lawsuits, and we have lost none of them. The cases that have been dismissed, the case in which they allow the president to continue firing people, was dismissed not on the grounds that the unions were wrong. It was dismissed on the grounds that they didn't have standing. And there are other lawsuits that are being filed. He's wrong about the majority of this stuff, but the legal process is painfully slow at dealing with this stuff. We'll win the substance of most of these lawsuits, the vast majority, but he has incredible power. And as long as we have congressmen who have no spine, who have no backbone to stand up for what's right, it's going to be a problem. My last hope is on the Supreme Court, and that's saying something because I don't like most of these justices.
Right. I want to say half. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just real quickly, look, I'm not pretending like it wasn't disconcerting or disappointing, but not entirely surprising that so many people support this guy. But I think it was Beverly who said earlier, or maybe it was Barbara, that talked about at some point folks are going to be impacted, and that's already starting to happen. And so I think some of that base is going to get cut into. So that's another reason to be, again, have full bill.
It's going to probably take.
You got to keep the hope. You have to.
But like in Texas with the measles outbreak, there's going to be more of those. And when children, Trump supporters' children get sick, maybe die, maybe that will change people. Take like the Pharaoh's born to
again.
Make
Joel, I'm sorry, I've got to push back on this. I had two very dear friends from high school, guys who I've been friends with for a long, long time. And when COVID came in, they spouted Trump's lies about this is no worse than the flu, and they were trying to tell people don't get vaccinated. Both of those guys died. Both of them died.
Well,
COVID.
and Louisiana is suspending mass vaccinations. Barb.
And you know what? All of his friends and family members who were Trump supporters, I thought that would all fall away. They're still Trump supporters.
It's crazy.
I don't understand it.
I don't understand.
But I don't see anything changing. They're blind.
No.
Barb, go ahead, and then Allan.
I forgot what I was going to say. I'm just listening to you guys, and it's gone. It'll come back, and I'll yell.
Happens all the time.
I want to say to Bill. I mean, we or Joel. We hope that when it's a personal impact. But you know what? We see guns. Children killed. We say, all right, well, that's in Connecticut, Florida, Texas. We say, okay, finally, we're going to get some really solid gun legislation. We're going to get better gun checks, background checks and stuff. And that happens and children get killed. Lots of children get killed. And it doesn't fucking matter because people don't. They love their guns. They love their, I mean, Trump is a cult figure. They
love their guns more than they love their kids, apparently.
Yeah.
Trump
is
Trump's
a cult
figure that people love him so much that they don't care. They suddenly love Russia because he loves Russia.
Is that what that is? They're martyrs for Trump. It's a religious crusade, and they're martyrs because of their suffering. Is that how it's going to be interpreted, or is it going to be outrage because you completely lied to me? I voted for you and I lost my job. My kids can't eat, and the schools are awful. Are people going to get pissed at Trump, or are they going to say we're a martyr for the cause? I mean, it's a frightening possibility.
But despite all that you're saying, people still want to come to this country, including white South Africans who gathered at the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria to claim that they're victims of racism. So
we need more white guys.
When you're talking about
brilliant.
When you're talking about the wretched refuse teeming for the shores, it's still happening. People like the guy in the beginning of The Godfather said, they still believe in America. One last thing, though, that I have to get to, because, this is probably the earworm of earworms, other than that wretched song, Simply Having a Wonderful Christmas Time by Paul McCartney. Yes, folks, in case you need a reason to go back to the, what's that called? Disney. There is going to be a new verse added to the It's a Small World ride. Mother Earth unites us in heart and mind, and the love we give makes us humankind through our vast, wondrous land, where we stand hand in hand. It's a small world after all. So
I didn't know you were so cynical, Saeed.
He didn't even do it justice, man. I get the
right. You gotta do some movement, some animation. Come on.
Maybe it's because I'm tone deaf. I don't know. But
I know better than that.
But maybe with the right kind of herb, the ride will be even better. Who knows? Anyways, Allan, I think with that, let's go to our last segment.
Wait, I have one song just for in honor of the weather. All right. Well, cold in the D.
But it's song. It drives me crazy.
Supposed to bleep it.
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear it.
All right.
I can hear it.
Are we
All
ready?
right, let's go.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, plenty to choose from. Beverly, who's yours?
Well, mine is just going to be a general statement, one that's been on my mind in probably most of our communities for the last month. My schmucks of the week are any CPS workers, any social worker, anyone that's tasked with a little job of overseeing about our children that didn't go that extra mile when they sensed something was wrong or didn't follow up. You're the schmuck of the week. You're supposed to be there for the ones who can't be there for themselves. So we got to protect our children as a community. But they're my schmucks of the week because too many of our children are being forgotten and dying and falling through the cracks.
All right, Joel.
I'm going to go with Trump, but for this reason. He gave a speech last night before the game, maybe that's why they lost, where he claimed again that Canada was going to be the 51st state and let's go get him. There's so many hockey players that are now Canadian, but you live, if you play hockey, you go to junior hockey, you live in Kitchener, you live in Ontario. Like that crowd that he's speaking to is a Canadian American crowd. It so distresses me. I love Canada. I love going. I went to summer camp in Canada. I love their maple syrup. What they've done with bacon is incredible. So it bothers me enormously that this Canadian thing that they're it's like my best friend. And, it's just, why are you angry with Canada? They're the nicest people. Tim Hortons. I don't get it. And it bothers me that he keeps fucking harping on it. So,
and he called Prime Minister Justin Trudeau governor. I mean, this is what Ottoman sultans used to do when they took over a new province like Egypt, and they made the person a governor. So yeah. All right, Darcy.
Oh, you would do that when I'm looking away. I have lots of choices, so but I'm going to go local, and I'm going to call the Schmucks of the week the mayor of Hamtramck, Mayor Amr. I don't want to mangle the name. Galib, as well as the 3 council members who use taxpayer dollars to go to the Trump inauguration. You don't have to agree politically, but don't waste taxpayer money if you want to support your politics. So those are my Schmucks of the week.
Almost $10,000 they spent. They said they were representing Hamtramck. They were invited, so. Yeah,
why would it take $10,000 for 4 people to go to DC? I mean, even if you're taking the Ohio and Pennsylvania turnpikes, I mean, come on. Yeah. Unless there's a first-class lane. Well, Faraz Khan, I just want to mention to you. You said that Canada may become the 11th province. What about territories? Why do you have to discriminate against the fact that Canada also has territories? Anyway, just saying. Barb.
This week, besides the obvious, to stay on my tech bro rant for the week, there's a group called Real Tea, a Florida-based company with an experimental business model. They're buying apartment buildings in Detroit, and they are using crypto, and they are completely ignoring the people that live there. They are remote oversight, blah, 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 blah. There is no property management. They are selling these, they're operating with a Michigan Real token. They're slumlords, and they're not even using real money. And in a city where we have a really severe housing problem, they are preying on Detroit, and no one seems to be stopping them. Outlier Media is doing a whole series on the stealing of Detroit homes, and I think it's something that you should follow. They're doing really good work, and it's terrifying to think of people. And again, these are the most vulnerable people in Detroit that are being taken advantage of by out-of-state people, out-of-the-country people, and they're not even using cash. And it's a damn shame. And what happened in Southwest Detroit, that isn't going to be the only place where that kind of thing happens, because we're going to keep ignoring the city.
All right, Bill.
Long list, and I appreciate all the ones that have already come up, but I'm going to go with one of the most disgusting people, I think, presently in the government, Stephen Miller. He gave a lecture at a press conference yesterday at the White House to the press corps about how they've fallen down, haven't done their job, and then said, I'm going to give you a little civics lesson. The guy is despicable. He's responsible for much of the planning of the dismantling of the government. We know it. And the law of unintentional consequences is going to come back and bite us all in the ass for what they're doing here. And I think it's going to be a real problem. But if you haven't seen his little press conference, his little show, Fox showed it as something positive last night, and CNN was laughing at it, and MSNBC didn't show it. I think it's amazing how this country, the people in this country are seeing the exact same thing in such different ways that I'm wondering how we ever bring it all back to them.
Yeah.
Is that the one where he was screaming at the camera?
Well, I think Stephen Miller doesn't know anything except screaming.
That was a CNN interview.
I think that was a CNN interview.
And he's done that. That's what he does in an interview. He starts screaming and getting crazy.
I mean,
he can't interview him, but he looks the part of a villain. He is
He looks like a thumb.
He looks the part of a villain, a callous, heartless human being, and that's pretty much what.
And those are his good attributes, Joe.
Yeah, I say that like it's a negative thing. I know it's yeah, crazy.
All right, Allan.
I'm going to go first with Steve Bannon for doing the Nazi salute. I mean, it's disgraceful. I mean, people are bringing up analogies to the 30s. They're aware of that, and they're just playing into that and basically giving the finger to everybody. The other one is the three senators, Murkowski, Collins, and Mitch McConnell. They can only be intermittently have some conscience. Like yesterday for Kash Patel, only Murkowski and Susan Collins voted against. Mitch McConnell voted for. Other times, Mitch McConnell has voted against. And then Murkowski voted for RFK, was embarrassed by her vote and said, well, we're going to, be monitoring him. We can't muster up more than 3 fucking votes on the other side to stand up. It's just incredible. It's just outrageous,
Absolutely. All right. Well, my schmuck of the week is Republican Congresswoman from South Carolina, Nancy Mace, who decided with all the other issues going on in the world, she was going to go ahead and go after a supermodel. Bella Hadid, who also happens to be a Palestinian American, had shared a photo, an old photo that she had where she is being shown a very large map of what says Western Palestine. And Congresswoman Mace blasted her for being, quote unquote, disgusting for showing a map which had erased Israel from it. Well, this was from a 2022 visit that Bella Hadid had to the Qatar National Library. And as libraries usually do, they have a whole host of old maps, like the Library of Congress does of America before Alaska and Hawaii joined, or America before the Louisiana Purchase, or America before it was America. And in this case, it was a map from the British Mandate of Palestine before the United Nations recognized the State of Israel in 1948. Hadid's family, by the way, is Palestinian, and her father, Mohammed, was a young boy in a city of Safed. And pre-1948, his family actually took in German and Polish Jewish refugees from Europe and housed them. Those same refugees then locked the door and actually kicked them out of their own home. But the fact that Nancy Mace couldn't tell a map from an old map and then goes after a person for just seeing a map definitely warrants my schmuck of the week to her. So Nancy Mace, this one's for you.
Right.
Anyways, thank you all for being on another episode of The Week That Was. Thank you for all of you who listened in or viewed us from wherever you might be, including, yes, you, Faris, from the west coast of California, where I guess you're hopefully just waking up. But thank you for being with us from there. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Darci McConnell. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. And thank you, and with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Have a great week.